I wanted to share the video of me making the museum board again. Because I did that, like, I swear, one of the very, very first videos I ever made with my phone. And I decided not to do a new one, primarily just because it's fine, but it does make me laugh because you'll see towards the end of the video. I mean, half my head is cut off, so it's funny, whatever. I had to leave it. I don't need to make a new one. But I wanted to talk about the museum boards because people are always asking me like recommendations for workshops or when you travel, and museum boards are just such a perfect way. I mean, Scott uses them on trips. He doesn't use them normally in his studio, but on trips, you'll see in the video, you can get these giant boards, polyurethane them or clear gesso them. Years and years ago, we used to use like clear shellac, but I mean, over time, I think shellac kind of yellows. So we just started using water-based polyurethane and brushing it on. And water-based polyurethane does come in like a satin and a gloss and maybe a matte. So I would just, I mean, I don't think it really matters, but I'm gonna say a matte or just a satin is probably what you would use. I also just wanted to say, sometimes you'll see us painting on different boards or mediums, so we don't only use the same stuff. Now, Scott will pretty much work on anything. I mean, if you've seen him, especially in the last couple of years, he loves to work on these abstracted backgrounds. So what he'll do is on a watercolor board or any sort of board, an acrylic cheap, canvas that you can get on any sort of inexpensive site. He will just do an acrylic abstraction and then paint on it. So it doesn't really matter what the surface is. I'm not sponsored by any canvas company. I use a lot of things. Now I have preferences, so I thought I would just talk to you about that. Now, this is a small little museum board. This is just a little 6x8. So in the video, you'll see that, I actually like these sort of gray. There might be a few companies that make these museum board. And the reason why we like them is because the color goes all the way through and it's archival. I mean, museums use it, so it's okay, we can use it. It's kind of sturdy and you can get different plies, so definitely make sure to get the heaviest weight. I'm always recommending, no matter what papers or boards you use like this, if you can get a choice, always get the heavier or the thicker weight. It's just easier so it doesn't get dented. And I personally like this sort of gray, this sort of neutral gray. It comes in white and it comes in, I think, a cream. Like I said, different companies might have different variations of what they call gray, and nowadays I see companies doing black and all kinds of stuff. So you could test it out with black too. Why not? I haven't done that yet, but I definitely would if I saw it. So this is totally what I would bring on a trip. And these are the type of things too that I use when I'm painting a model from life. Because when I'm painting a model from life, usually it's in a group. Sometimes it's just Scott and me, but I'm always going into it thinking that this is a study. This is a chance for me it's like an exercise to kind of, paint and draw and something on demand, right? These are perfect because if the canvas is expensive, then I will be tempted to wash it off. I'll be tempted to paint over it. These things I'll never be tempted to paint over. So a lot of times I'll like to keep them for a long time just to study like my progress, maybe what did I do wrong. There's just no reason to paint over these. So museum board is great. Now something else that I use is like these wood. You can get these sort of pine, I think they're pine, these wood boards. You can get them in different thicknesses from different companies. A lot of plein air painting companies will sell these naked boards. Now, they are meant to be gessoed or meant for artists to adhere linen canvas or acrylic canvas on top of this. In general, I will put an oil-based primer. Now, Scott would just put an acrylic primer. He doesn't need, or it's just not his preference to work on the oil-based primers. They are more expensive, and they probably are a little bit slicker, maybe a little bit smoother. I like that. So I'm not a super thick painter like Scott. So just showing you that these are things that I will paint on also. Probably in the last 2 years, I have started to work on this gesso board by Ampersand. I really like it. Now, I think Ampersand has multiple surfaces, acrylic, oil. I mean, I think they have a gambit of just different types of surfaces that you can paint on. I mean, I like it. Now, even I've painted on the slick vellums, I've painted on different types of papers, and sometimes when I recommend these, people are like, oh, I don't like it, or it didn't work with my style, and I get it. This is why you test it out, and if it works, then great. But if it doesn't work for you, then totally. You know, I've had those issues before with me where I've seen like a really well-known artist paint on some expensive canvas, and of course I'm thinking, hey, you know, maybe my paintings will be awesome if I worked on that canvas. And then I tried it and it just was a struggle, or I don't think it flowed the way I was hoping. And so then I get frustrated and I start to feel bad. And so everybody is different. And that's why I'm always trying to tell you that, like, Scott and I are different. So anyways, I've really started to love these. And the fact is that since they're boards and it's not a canvas, it's just a preparation. It's like a gessoed on this board. It will never warp. It's pretty indestructible, which is what I like, because I have had canvases stretched on stretcher bars and sent them to shows in the past. And because of temperature, like I live in the southeast, right? So it's more moist. Now, if I'm sending my stretched canvas to the north or to the west, it's gonna have a difference. I remember sending a painting to a big show, arriving to the big show, seeing my painting on the wall and just being horrified that it was bubbling, and I had to ask the gallery to take it down. And they didn't even have those stretcher pliers, so I had to do it by hand, and I had to ask for just normal little pliers. It was a nightmare to re-stretch it. So I just know that that's not exactly what I prefer. The stretched canvases, I mean, I will paint on them, but it's not my number one choice because of that issue. And things can get poked through. Years ago, I had sent a big kind of painting to a gallery in the Southwest. And I guess when they shipped it to the collector, because it was so big, you know, the shipping companies use those machines with those like metal kind of forks that go through it, and it went straight through my painting. Luckily, I didn't have to pay for it being repaired. You know, I just got a message, you know, that the collector, when they received it, had a hole through it. Now, the gallery had it insured, so they just took it to a restorer. I mean, I think they were asking me if I wanted to restore it, but I didn't really know how to restore it, you know, to put the backing on, the glue. So it was paid by an actual professional restorer to do it. And I mean, so those are just some of the issues that I think why a lot of times artists are going with boards now. Anyways, I really do like the gesso board by Ampersand. Now, Scott and I have, over the years, have been going through this where we just don't want to buy expensive frames anymore. And they get damaged. Collectors want to change up the frame, and we've spent all this money. It's more expensive to ship something bigger because you have a frame, on and on and on. And so Scott will definitely paint on those gallery wraps. Now, those things are professionally like wrapped, and they're not going to really bubble like a, you know, regular of us like trying to do that. So he will work on the gallery wrap and send those out to shows and other things because they look very contemporary, and people can always add a frame if they want, but they look clean enough. And also these wood cradle. So this is by Hardboard. Oh, this is also by Ampersand. I should know that. So I've started to do this also. The only downside, and it's kind of similar to the other boards, the only downside to this is that I can be one of those artists that change my mind. meaning I might be doing an 18 by 24 and it's not working, or maybe, the whole top right hand corner of the painting is not working. So I will cut it down. Like I have Scott use a saw, or we will cut the canvas and I will make it into a 12 by 16, definitely. And with these type of things, it's not, you can't really do that. So, but I do plan to paint this. And you can put like little wires on the inside here and have a little wire, or somebody can just, but I can then send it off or sell it just like this. And this is pretty strong, and I'm really liking these. So I call these cradle boards. I think it's called hardboard, but it's by Ampersand also. So you can get them with just like a brown color. These usually do need to be sealed in some way. I just sealed it with water-based polyurethane or a clear gesso. Now, you could definitely just put, I just had this sort of gray gesso. Actually, that's what I did. That's right. This is a gray gesso that I just put on it. So you can still see the gray on it. But I think it came as sort of a dark brown, and you can definitely just put a regular white gesso and then tone it any way you want. So this is another thing that I've been using a lot. Now, early on, when Scott and I first started painting, we didn't have all these choices in the 90s. The best canvases out there were called Claussens. And Claussens is a European company, and they would have these numbers, meaning like portrait texture was number 13, and then a slightly rougher texture was like a 15, if you were gonna do maybe landscape or have more, you could see more like weave, right? And they had all these different numbers, and oil base and then acrylic base. Now, nowadays, you can still buy those rolls of Claussens canvas, but there's so much canvas out there. There's so many good canvases out there that I can't even give you suggestions on that. We still have big rolls of different kinds of canvases over the years. And there were even some canvases that we had learned from, like by Richard Schmid, which you can't even get anymore. So over the years, we had bought rolls of these canvases, and because all these boards started to come out in the last 10, 15 years, we would just have this canvas like sitting around. But this, you can get like Claussens, and you can get different canvases adhered to this sort of foam, like gator board or foam core. Everybody uses different words, gator board or foam core. And the thicker the foam core is better for when you're gonna get larger. So in the past, sometimes Scott would get the canvas already adhered to this and have it shipped to us. Already done. And sometimes to fit a frame, you would cut it down. Just like I said, these are easy to cut down. And this was a scrap. I've had this for years. These are the type of things, these little scraps that you keep, and you're like, one day I'm gonna paint on it. Well, it's an odd size, right? It's very vertical. To do a portrait or a figure on it, we have to be very specific. So recently, since I've been really trying to practice still lifes and just putting objects in front of me without a thought. I'm going to use up scraps. I'm going to use up what I have already. So I'm going to be using museum boards. I'm going to be using these Ampersand gesso boards. I'm going to be using all these things that I have already. And this would just happen to be, I think this was a Claussens portrait texture just adhered to one of these. And so you can just, they have these all over the place. There's so many companies out there. You can find them from all kinds of like pochade. If you want to find really good canvases too, a lot of times these travel pochade companies will have links to canvases. And so you can test those out. So this is just one other way that what surfaces we'll paint on. Probably the last, 8 years, Centurion. Centurion, I think in the beginning you could only get it from Jerry's Artorama. Now I think you can get it from a lot of other places, and you can even get it from like Amazon. Scott will work on the acrylic, or I personally like the oil primed. So it will come in very these thin sort of like, I'm assuming it's some sort of cardboardy kind of board inside, but it's already wrapped, so you don't have to do anything. I really love this Centurion. It is so inexpensive. And oh my God, I just think about it. Like if this was available when we were starting out painting, we would save so much money because we would want to have that Clausen's when we started out, and it's just, you just don't need it. I mean, this is perfect. So you can get the Centurion stretched on stretcher bars, I think like the gallery wrap. You can get it on this, but you can also, I have it in here. So you can also get it in sheets. So the sheets are kind of like this. They come in sort of like these little pads. Centurion oil primed sheets. Now you're going to be able to get like 10 or 20 in a package for much less than getting them adhered to a board array. And those are great for sketches. Now, if one comes out like a miracle, right? One comes out so beautifully, you can always adhere that to a gator board or another board. And that's not hard to do. And we can show you in another video how to adhere it. It's just, you just save so much money. But when Arches oil, this Arches, it's French, I guess. It's just called an oil pad. Now, it's different. I mean, when I first worked on it, I mean, it takes a little bit of a learning curve, but if you can get used to it and you can just be very direct is what I'm going to say. It's not the type of surface where you're going to have subtleties or washes and being able to lift up, because you're not going to be able to like lift up like an oil canvas. If you put down a wash, you can wipe it clean. It's going to stain. It's not going to be as slick or as smooth as some other things, but I really like it. So, but I just know that when I'm going to work on it, it's a little bit more direct. I mean, it's kind of makes you feel like you're working with gouache or something. Once you put down the initial wash, then it really does kind of stick on top, but it's a great thing to actually practice with and just have an open mind and just know that all of these surfaces, they're going to have pros and cons. So I just thought I wanted to go over all the different surfaces that I use right now, and I morph and I kind of just use what's in my closet. So today, I'm using like a Clausen's from, remember I told you I had those big rolls? Well, they've just been sitting around, I mean, decades, right? So I wanted to start to use them up on some of these still lifes. So I just recently, since I've been doing a lot of still lifes, I'm going to show you. It's a little bit clumsy. Still trying to figure out. I have my bigger pochade in my downtown studio, but I'm going to just use this overhead light, and I've turned all the other lights off, and I've used this sort of cardboard box to just sort of block the light coming from the other side of the room. It's pretty primitive, but it will work today. And what I have is I just have a loose sheet of canvas. So this is just, you know, a very portrait texture, very smooth, but it's just loose. So I just taped it to a piece of a foam core, and I have taped, or with pencil, just sort of marked out what a 14 by 18 is. Believe me, I don't know if it's going to turn out to be a 14 by 18. Maybe I'll like to zoom in because I just generically bought a whole bunch of different colored onions, and I just threw them on this table, and I doing this so that I don't overthink it. I don't over art direct. But I thought, well, if I just have this loose piece of canvas and I just start painting, and I want these to be very direct. I don't want these to be multi-day paintings, that maybe I will leave it somewhat of a vignette, meaning kind of left undone, and maybe I can like even crop it in. But with this loose canvas, it allows me to be very, very flexible. I mean, this easel is way too big for this little spot, so it's all right. I'll make it work. I'll make it work. You see I have windows over here, and unless I really want to just completely darken those windows, I am using a kind of a cardboard box or a cardboard thing. I'm using like this big cardboard box that we obviously had bought something in, and I was going to kind of, I guess, experiment with putting still lifes inside of it to block out all the light, but I'm kind of liking the strong light from my above skylight lights, so I think I'm just going to use it to block off this window over here. I also just bought a brand new Panasonic video camera. We already have one just like this that I've been using in past videos. But I really wanted a higher, the most newest one, and I'm testing it out today. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna test out this camera alongside my old camera and see what the colors look like. When you're filming videos, you're always just trying to get the best color. I mean, that's really, really important. So, but I love how small it is. This is, Panasonic 4K. It's the newest one. It just came out a few months ago. What is the number? Oh, so for me too, I get anxious about filming myself painting. It puts a lot of pressure on yourself. So for anybody who wants to start filming themselves painting, I really recommend you getting a camera that can do time progressive shots. Like one that can take like every minute, every 3 minutes. Just take a shot, a shot, a shot. So it almost, that way you don't have to think about it. It doesn't take up a lot of power. You're not worried about, how long your painting is going. And then afterwards, you can see if it's worth it. But you have to just start filming yourself and so for me too, I know that if I just start filming myself, it's very easy. It's not like the olden days. We can just delete this digital image, the footage that I did. In the olden days, you'd have film, and you were wasting film. So I'm so funny how I always talk about the olden days, it's ridiculous. But anyway, so I'm just getting over this, especially me doing still lifes. I have to get over this sort of anxiety of going, well, this might be very basic and I might be, who knows, I might not like it at all, but okay, just start filming yourself. And each day, just get into the habit of filming yourself, and you can always delete it at the end of the day. Or, hold on for a couple of weeks, and then even if like just one part of that video is okay, you can use that. You don't have to have a full completion from A to Z. So anyways, I just thought I would tell you what I'm doing today, and the canvases I use, my setup, and just practice on all different surfaces, and you'll find the one that's right for you. So far, as I've been blocking in, I've been trying to use big brushes, like I've been saying, and really using a lot of these creams and yellow greens. When I block in my onions though, see how I go through, I'm just doing a generic home. Is that not a good word? Not a generic, meaning a basic home color. So for the red onions, just a basic magenta or dark red. Not really trying to think about all the nuances, right? And when I'm doing the yellow and the white onions, I'm thinking a little bit about the cylinder, meaning I'm thinking a little bit about the fact that the shadows are going to be a little bit on the right side because of the light source, but not going dark. So this is what's in my brain, not going dark, trying to keep the shadows and the halftones in the light. I'm really just going piece by piece, started off with my center of interest, and then painting what's right next to it. And also just notice these grouping of these like white shallot onions. I'm painting through them, not trying to do individual, because I'm gonna see how sketchy and, I want it to be gestural, because I don't want it just to be onion, 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 onion. I want this to be the most in focus, and then zigzagging it as I definitely get to the onions up there, and onions in the corners are going to be hopefully just a couple of strokes, like they're in the peripheral vision. Okay. Each still life will be blocked in a little bit different, but it is best to do your darker colors first, because you need to be able to keep your darks clean and then put your lights on top of them. Still trying to figure it out, but I just wanted to kind of show you, definitely using some of these convenient creams, yellows, a lot of yellow and oranges, a little bit of burnt sienna, and I've really been using a lot of the Viridian and that sort of kind of light green from Gamblin. Tiny bit of this Gamblin solvent-free gel just to move the paint sometimes without it thinning. So a mixture of sometimes using Gamsol and then sometimes using this. But you see, I'm not using a ton of it. So just a little bit sometimes to move the paint if I need to, especially in the foreground, to kind of move paint without thinning it too much because I don't want it to run. The whole block in, I've been filming on this camera, a more close-up of the canvas, and I've been filming with this camera in the very beginning, a dual shot of my palette with me and the painting. And now I'm just focusing on just the palette, and we'll see in the future how I put those together. Now I kind of have paint on pretty much all the canvas, except for that tiny bit of that white onion. But this is the stage now where I really see, do I completely go in and kind of, let's just say, demolish or disappear some of those onions in the upper right-hand corner. Because I do know that this is going to be my focal point right here. And this will have all the prettiest colors, sharpest accents, you know, all that stuff. So this is peripheral vision back there. And already those onions maybe are a little bit too literal, meaning I'm just going to gestural and get them out of there, well, hinting at them. I'm only going to work a few more hours on this because I want these paintings to feel like demos and not have you know what I mean, not overwork them. It is so fun painting onions. Oh my gosh. Especially those, I just love painting onions. I don't know why. So there you go. I wanted to show you a little bit of the progress of what I'm doing.
Hi, we're gonna do museum boards today. I always suggest people try and work on the cheapest canvas you can. Years ago, I don't even know when I started doing this. It probably was about 15, 20 years ago. I started to gesso, shellac, polyurethane, different mat boards. And then I learned about museum board. And the kind I like especially is from Stratford. And I ordered my museum board from Dick Blick. I think that's the place I could find it at. And it comes in a 32 by 40 board. It is 4-ply. Please get the thickest board you possibly can. And I ordered 4. So, you know, you might as well order, you know, you're going to pay for shipping. You might as well do a whole bunch of panels at once. So what they have is they have sort of a darker gray, and then they kind of have a lighter gray. So you can kind of see the difference here. I like both. Right now I'm going to show you the darker gray. It comes really nicely packaged in these boxes. And so 4 boards with packing and shipping came out to be exactly $98.70. I did the math, divided by 4 boards. A good idea before you start sealing your board is to line them up. I mean, sometimes I'm not a smart person and I don't do that, but today I was like, I'm going to be smart. And so I lined it up and I did 8 by 10s. 8 by 10 is a great size for me doing sketches, especially lots of little portraits or maybe little tiny still life studies. And guess what? So I can get 4 on this board. It came out to be about $1.20. $1.20. Okay, who can beat that? Okay, so let me put this aside. And so I'm going to show you some of the materials that I used. What I had was just this like really big ruler, and I had this T-square. Now some of you guys might have a big T-square that actually has a ruler on it. Perfect. And what I did was I just lined up, you know, and made these boxes with pencil or pen. You just create these little 8 by 10. It's really a great idea to use T-square. Trying to keep your ruler straight. Sometimes it gets a little bit off, and you really don't want all of a sudden towards the end of your board to have a little bit of an angle. Sometimes then they won't fit in the frames correctly. All right. Now I went to Lowe's yesterday and I bought this. This is a 1-coat polyurethane. It's a water-based polyurethane clear satin. I just got this little quart. For 4 boards, let's see how far this goes. Usually I get gallons, but you know, for you guys, I'm kind of trying to be as responsible as possible. I don't want you to get materials that you don't like or won't use in the future. So maybe just get a quart, see if you like it, then you can get a gallon in the future. Okay. There are 3 ways that you can put this on. You can buy these super cheap, inexpensive, you know, brushes from any sort of craft store or hardware store, you know, 3 inches, 3.5 inches, or these great sponges. This is okay, they're super cheap, but the problem is sometimes when you're gessoing or varnishing or doing anything with these, sometimes these little hairs come out and you have to be careful and, you know, get them out so they don't dry. Sponges are probably a step up. The best choice is to get these little rollers, and I suggest the rollers that have this more like foam instead of the nap or the kind of really fuzzy. So these are just, I guess they're called cabinet and door. You know, I would get these larger packs because if you start to like doing this, you might as well have them. And sometimes, you know, you want to roll at least I'm going to say 3 coats on one side. And if you're going to be super great, do a coat on the other side. The fact that this is a 4-ply, usually it won't bend, but hey, let's be smart and let's put a sealant on the other side also. The reason why I say get a pack is because if you're, you know, doing 1 coat and you're trying to do all boards at the same time, you're going to have to wait at least a half hour, 45 minutes, depending on where you live. If it's really moist out and rained, you might have to wait longer. And because you need to wait in between the coats. Now, I like working on a table like this. If you have to work on the floor, I highly recommend putting a tarp or some maybe plastic bags around the edges. No matter what, you know, it might be a good idea. I'm in my studio, so it's not as big a deal if I get a little bit of drips here and there. That's what these carpets are for. But if you're doing it in some sort of garage or room that you really don't want to get any mess, please put a tarp, because just pushing it off, maybe a little bit might drip. All right, so this is what I'm gonna do. I am going to open this up. Let me put this aside. Trusty little can opener. You can kind of shake it up. This stuff does go bad. So we actually had a big gallon of the polyurethane, but I hadn't used it in a while. And when I opened it up, it was completely bad and rotten. You know, I would say, you know, maybe if it goes bad or starts to change colors in the gallon, don't use it. I know that sounds obvious, but really. Okay. Oh, these are new tops. This is sort of almost like a plasticky vinyl top. You know how sometimes they have them metal? So it's clear. Let me move this out of the way. I'm going to try and do all boards at one time. That way, you know, you kind of make a day of it and you're productive. Okay, so you don't have to have a separate pan or anything. What I'm going to do is just pour a little bit. Oh, I'm going to make sure I have a paper towel ready, because as I, you know, pour it, it's going to drip. So I'm just going to do this. You see how you kind of, all right, and see how far this goes. Oh, you know, what would have been smart is to use my roller, right? And take it off of this with the roller. Okay. So it soaks it up a little bit in the beginning. That's why you need to do at least three layers. This sponge is so much better. I used to use my brushes. That's why I know the hairs come off, because I used to use that. And let me tell you, it's a lot more work. So a little bit got on my table right here, but this is my studio, so it doesn't really matter. But you know, maybe the next one I'll be smart. I love being able to tell you guys all my mistakes. Isn't it fun to learn from people's mistakes? Okay. So this is, you know, just going to take as long as it takes. So you see how much I poured out. And that's why I was like, I wonder if this, no, this quart will take all 4 sheets. Definitely will. But this is how you do it. You kind of like make sure like you're painting a wall and you get every bit. Now the cool thing is that it does make it the teensiest bit darker. So you will know if you miss a spot. And I like working high so that I don't hurt my back. But if all you have is the floor, that will be good because then you can lay out all 4 boards and do them all at once. Okay, so this is going to take me a little bit of time because I'm going to do 1 coat on this, get the other board, do another coat on that, etc., etc., etc. And then I'm going to let them dry and then do another coat and then another coat. One way to speed up the process, if you want to do a coat on the other side, is you can, Scott was telling me, especially with like canvas boards or stuff, you can maybe put a few like tacks or screws, and once you've done the other side, the side you're not going to paint on, you can lay a few screws down and lay it on, and that way it will still be able to dry a little bit while you do your second or third coat. All right, so I'm just going to do this and then catch up on you in a little bit. All right, so I put at least 1 really thick, good coat on these 4 boards, and I'm going to let them dry. I have a fan going to help the process, and it just all depends on the temperature where you are. 2 of the boards I lined out. One I did 8x10s, another one I did 9x12s, and then there's going to be some like smaller or odder sizes on the edges. But those are 2 of the sizes that I just go to all the time. These 2 boards, I just polyurethaned because I just don't know. Maybe I do actually have odd-sized frames, so you know, maybe I'll cut those down, or maybe I'll even cut them down to 6x8s or something. Okay, so just wanted I'm going to let these dry, and I'll let you know how long it takes. Ooh, I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you 2 of the little portrait sketches that I've done recently on this board. This is an 8x10. Oh, these are both 8x10s. Actually, I started off with this being a 9x12, and I cut it down to an 8x10 because I felt that there was just too much space around the edges. So that's the other great thing about these boards, is that they're so easy to cut. You can kind of manipulate the composition. So if you want to start off with like an 11x12 or 11x14, you can then customize the size. I didn't leave any of these boards clean, but they are perfect for multimedia. And I would do charcoals or pastel, or maybe acrylic and pastel on these boards too. So that's just something to think about if you want to do dry media on them too. Okay, so I did all my coats, and I'm going to show you how I cut one of the boards. The other ones are still drying. Please don't be impatient. It's really tempting to want to just like rush through this. Make an afternoon of it, and make sure you are in a well-ventilated room, a porch with you can open doors and windows, because especially when you're doing a whole bunch like this, it can get like kind of toxic. Also, I noticed that I'm a nincompoop. Yeah, I mean, I could have been smart and refilmed it, but whatever. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. What is 4 times 4? It is 16. It's somehow I thought this was 5, and that was going to be 20. Anyways, so when I did the calculation of how much it cost per, you know, it's probably going to come out to be about what, $1.50 now instead of $1.20. Yeah, you can do the math, but it's still really, really cheap. Okay. So this, you'll need something like this, like a really sturdy, heavy-duty one where you can really grab, and you can change these blades out because you'll want to do that every now and then so that you get good cutting. I'm using this board, the box that the boards came in, to protect my table, and I actually started to use this box to do my rolling on because it just made a larger, sturdy surface. I have my T-square, and I'm putting my T-square like flush, so I have my board all the way to the edge. And the thing I'm going to suggest is do multiple light cutting. So what I mean by that is don't press down hard, because what happens is there's inevitably you're going to go into the size, into the interior of the canvas, and I've done that so many times with papers, canvases, and then you get this little gouge, and unless you want to go over it with like a nice thick thing of gesso, you don't want to do that. So make sure this is level, put your hand down very, very sturdy, and you just do multiple. See, I'm just kind of doing it lightly and letting the blade till I can touch the cardboard underneath. Another thing to be patient of, but remember, at the end of all this, you'll have so many canvases, probably enough canvases for half a year or more, depending on how many sketches you do. So I'll cut this out. I'm still letting those dry, and yeah, I think that you'll really like this. I think these are what I'm going to use for any sort of time sketches, and especially the portraits. So this is a great thing to have when you want to do timed little sketches. Okay, great. All right. Safety first. Be very, very slow and deliberate.